How was your pee break?
My pee break.
They might flash you undetected.
Random, baby.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. Quite an intro.
Let's address the elephant in the room. That's not the elephant in the room. There's no elephant. Nobody cares.
I too am a thought criminal.
Good. Well, I like you already.
Does this look like a girl who's joking around?
No.
Around?
But how much do you actually understand money? Especially the new wave.
Beauty or intelligence? When you unleash both, it is men's kryptonite. Welcome to Talk to Me, Taylor. Okay, everybody, don't blink, don't move, because I have a rarity today on the show. An endangered species gone almost extinct. I don't know. I think so, but we have a celebrity with us in the chat who is not afraid to speak the unpopular opinion, go out on a limb, not throw Jews under the bus. I know. It's like, what? Yeah, I know. I found one. And before he's like in some museum, right, as the last remaining one, we're going to have this awesome conversation with him. James Maslow, welcome back to the show after we keep meeting like this. It's like 3 years. And my audience and I are super flattered because you took the time out of your international tour. You're in Prague. You're performing with, Big Time Rush to sold out arenas. And here you are with us. So
well, it's my pleasure. It's good to see you. And I was telling you right before we started, but thank you for sending some of the old interviews because it was a nice reminder of all the times we've met and some of the more interesting and frankly hard conversations we've had. And I genuinely appreciate that and appreciate you using your platform to talk about things, perhaps just outside of pop culture.
It's so mutual. And I mean what I say, even in the intro, it is so rare. And, I really appreciate it. I don't know if you saw this, James, but Nicki, I thought of you actually before doing this interview because Nicki Minaj, I'm sure you saw, she spoke at the UN about real genocide. And she had an interview after and she said, sometimes it's as a celebrity, as someone, high profile, it's not easy to speak out on the unpopular opinion or this,
Sure.
But I feel it's what's right. And I so thought of you. So bring us a little bit, because you've been such a fierce advocate for Israel and for Jews in a time when everything is upside down. You released a song On My Mind in a partnership with Birthright, which is amazing. I went on Birthright as well.
All right on.
So talk about that, because that can't be easy. I see some of the comments you get. You are on an international tour. Like I said, some of the comments are gnarly. Do you have people in your orbit who are like, maybe don't, James? Maybe. I mean, I know you're one to stick to your guns, which I really respect and appreciate about you, but talk about navigating that.
Of course I do. I have had many people who even represent me, not many who still represent me, to be clear, say, don't do this, don't be outspoken. Um, from their perspective, from a business only perspective, they're weighing what's the upside, and there is so much downside. But having done this now, well, I've been outspoken well before October 7th. In fact, one of the interviews you sent me of us speaking was when I'd gotten back from Israel. This is now 4 years ago, roughly,
Yeah.
and was right next to a terrorist attack on Giesendorf, where a Palestinian from the West Bank, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, in the Middle East is different than Gaza, is run by the PA, the Palestinian Authority, which is not Hamas. So, again, so much nuance, so much history, so much geographic confusion in a very small place. And even speaking out on that, I was very frustrated that the Western news wasn't talking about it because Tel Aviv, Giesendorf is like Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, which is where I was living at the time. It is a metropolis of bars and restaurants, people of every different religion, ethnicity, skin color, intermingling, working together, living together, partying together. It's a beautiful first world country and first world part of the world. And I couldn't understand why this wasn't a bigger deal because something like that hadn't happened in Tel Aviv in over a decade. There are instances in Israel, but mostly, near the border of Gaza and mostly just outside or inside the West Bank. So anywho, I digress on that, but navigating it, certainly isn't easy, but having done it for as long as I've done it now, I have actually found quite a bit of positivity. And like everything else in life, I choose to focus on the good parts of things. I think we have a choice every day in how we get to perceive things, how we get to focus, and whatever we give energy to grows. And so, long story long, yes, there are people that are very frustrated that I'm speaking my mind at all, that would prefer me just to act and just to sing. And perhaps I would have agreed with that as a younger man. But I'm okay with losing those people because who I am gaining is so much more valuable to me. They're actually aligned with who I am, not just what I do as an actor, not just what I do as a musician. And when I started almost 2 decades ago, I'd say there was quite a difference. You were supposed to just be on screen or on stage and then have your anonymity. Your lives were different. And now the world has changed. Social media, in a positive way, has made it that you need to thoroughly, genuinely know the people that you're watching, the musicians, the actors, the influencers. And if you don't, it's going to feel disingenuous. And so, this to me is the quickest way to cut through the shit. If we're being honest, this is who I am. This is who I'm aligned with. And it's been really fantastic. It's actually attracted to me a lot of really smart, really wonderful people.
That's awesome. And it is so crazy, but not that we did have this conversation before October 7th. You're exactly right. So it was already, palpable at the time. And I too have faced, and I'm trying to get my viewers really into what we see in our world because I too have faced so much pushback, James, be it from big outlets I worked for or editors, even down to the granular of other writers, like, be it, slapping, with a tap on the wrist, putting me on suspension or telling me to back down or maybe delete that tweet. And the crazy thing to me is, I identify with you so much as to go right is right and wrong is wrong. Like even the Nicki Minaj thing blew my mind because for her to say like what she's actually witnessing, which is again actual genocide, and she's like, I know it's not unpopular. It's like, what? That's how upside down the world is.
It is,
Where I don't know,
unfortunately.
it's like basic, this is baseline morality, like where right is right and wrong is wrong, like I said. Um,
Yeah.
how does it make you feel being so inside that world to see you because you're an anomaly, right? We see so many celebrities like again throw Jews under the bus, boycott Israeli production or in their acceptance speeches or on the red carpet, go so hard with, freak whatever it is. How does that make you feel?
Mostly sad for them and
Yeah,
disappointed in them, because I sincerely believe the vast majority of them, if not all of them, just don't have enough information.
that's the thing,
They're
right?
getting just
Yeah,
a small piece of it, right? And whether there is some truth to that or no truth at all, that's the majority of content that is serviced to TikTok on social media. It's propaganda. And this
yeah,
is nothing new. In fact, we'll talk about maybe in a minute. I just visited Auschwitz.
yeah,
And certainly wasn't a fun day, but there's entire rooms dedicated to the propaganda that Hitler and the Nazis and World War II through the Holocaust created. So, unfortunately, anti-Semitism and propaganda and these strategies are nothing new, but they are new to us. They're new to our generation, and especially people younger than us who have had no personal reference to anything radical, anything scary and dangerous and evil. At least, and I hate to say this as a good thing, but at least you and I are old enough to remember 9/11. I was in the sixth grade. I remember that vividly.
hmm
And
hmm
anybody alive at that time wasn't more than one or maybe two handshakes away from someone that lost people there. My uncle used to go to the second tower. I think it was the second, might have been the first, I believe it was the second, every month with his other 11 best friends. And on 9/11, 2001, he was the only one who was too busy at work to show up. He lost all of his friends, his best friends, his family. And in my attempt to understand how people can be so cavalier, they can take a term like Nazi and repurpose it as if it doesn't mean anything, and then try and use it ironically and so insultingly to call Jews Nazis. when by definition, Nazis are people who wanted to eradicate Jews. Um, it's frustrating, but again, I go back to I just don't believe they've taken much of a look at history, nor have they gone on much of a deep dive on what's actually happening and the truth of what's happening and the nuance of what's happening. They just see something that is visceral on their page that
Yeah.
anybody would get upset at, and they get upset at it, but they're blaming the wrong people.
I would recommend a. Do you follow the Free Press at all?
I mean,
Barry
a little bit.
Weiss's site. Yeah, they did a new piece. I recommend it, but it's a whole interview with one of the college students who was basically it was really fascinating just to get in their minds. But she was former like pro-Palestinian. They interviewed her, and she's
Yeah.
basically reveals what you're saying. She's like, I didn't know. And I think when it comes to these kids at college campuses, these people in Hollywood, it's information. It's like it's so I hate to throw that because this is another one that's thrown around so much, but it's so ignorant. And if they really understood, it's like the crux of this, you're exactly right, is true evil, true terror. Look at 9/11. I just watched the Bin Laden documentary on Netflix. Like the true manifesto, like literally kill all the Americans, kill the Jew. And it's again, and I always bring it back to like these are people who on the face of it, right, are supposed to be all about freedom and liberalism. It's like, but this is the literal exact antithesis. So I think it's just,
Yeah.
it's so sad. And you know what, James? uh I wonder, is there, because people ask me this all of the time, like they could come across this interview and they'll tune out in the first 2 seconds, right? Oh, Zion is
Sure.
so evil, like it's been so the well's been so poisoned.
Right.
What do you think? And I want to get into your work as well with what you're doing at college campuses with men too, but is it worth reaching over to the other side of the aisle, so to speak, and bring them up? Like, how does it even happen? Or is it just too far gone? Like, it's so
Well,
far gone. It's
the
so bad.
conversation, the table needs to be set and the conversation needs to be extended. The hand should remain out for anybody who's willing to talk about
Yeah.
this. If you just want to yell and scream, regardless of what side you're on, then no, let's not waste our time. I sincerely discourage anybody
Yeah.
from getting into the Twitter battles. By the way, we're still calling it Twitter, okay? I've never called it X. You wouldn't know it. I said X
It is
slash
still
Twitter.
Twitter. No,
Um,
exactly.
because on either side, and unfortunately on this side over here, it's also becoming radicalized. But that 10%, and I want to
Sure.
believe it's only 10% on either side. And for the sake of clarity and simplicity, this 10% will always agree with us. So that's an echo chamber. What's the point? Cool.
Sure.
Same side. There's no need
Sure.
for it.
Yeah.
This 10% will never agree with us. There's a huge chunk in the middle. There's 80%, 70, 80% of people who haven't made up their mind necessarily, or they think they feel this way, but there's still a little bit of doubt, or they simply don't fucking care. Uh, and those are the people that I think
Yeah.
I seek to inform, I seek to reach with the content and the conversations I have. And I do find that are quite a few people on college campuses. I've been speaking quite a bit, whether it's just motivation or it's entrepreneurship or anti-Semitism. In between touring, I'm finding myself quite frequently on college campuses, speaking to people with all sorts of differences of opinion. I love the people that ask me the hard questions, so long as they're asking them and willing to listen to the answer. But my job is also to maintain a calm demeanor, give my perspective, give whatever experience, fact, history, whatever information I have to offer, and also sit back and listen to theirs. And if I can do my best to distill down why some of these communities, some of these college students might be on this side, quite literally siding with terrorists, which sounds crazy. I've
No.
tried to think about where's the commonality. And the commonality, at least in a lot of cases that I've seen, is a frustration. Is on one side a true hate for America and a hate for democracy.
Isn't that
And the other side, if
crazy?
they're not quite at the level of hating America and hating democracy, they're certainly either being taught to not like democracy and that it's bad, which is a very, very dangerous place to go, or being taught to hate America, or even if they're not being taught it, right? Let's just assume that there's nothing nefarious happening and no billions of dollars from Middle Eastern countries coming into our colleges, although there are. But you also can just be a young person growing up wondering, how the hell am I ever going to be able to afford a house? The barrier to entry
Yeah.
is so freaking high. It was high when we started out, and it is way higher now.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. That's something I can understand. Like even with Mamdani in New York,
Sure.
how do we elect a socialist in, first of all, the largest city of Jews
I know.
anywhere in the world?
I
But even
know.
then, Judaism aside, the capital of finance of the entire
I
world. If you
know.
were to distill it into a single city, it's New York City, bar none. And again, the majority of people voting were too young to have any experience of what socialism might actually be, or they grew up in the United States where we've never truly had this. And so all they're doing is going, well, it hasn't worked for me the way it's
Yeah.
been. And so, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to vote for the opposite. That's it. And
Yeah.
although I don't agree with that, I can understand that.
Yeah. And you know what? It is, my guest and I last night were talking about this, economically driven. There's so many, I think it's that. And also the
Yeah.
fact that they, even with this issue, how it's been propagated to where these kids are putting an Americanized colonization lens on what's happening there. It's like they are literally nothing alike, right? So it's that's this sort of vengeance. But to get to your point, it's almost this state of desperation. It's
Yeah.
like desperate economic whatever it is, that's driving that. And yeah, it's wild. I wrote a Substack, James, you would appreciate it, and it's like tragically funny but not. And you
Aren't so
you
many
came up in
things these days.
Hollywood. What's that?
Aren't so many things these
I
days.
mean, but basically how Hamas is really good at PR and Israel's horrible at PR. Like it's
Oh,
literally
that's a stunning
like
fact,
Hollywood
unfortunately.
walks so Hamas could run, right? Like PR. Um, Talk about, I want to hear a little bit more about your Auschwitz trip and your Star of David necklace you were telling me about. And also, just, I love how real you are and you're so transparent. Like, talk to me about moving through the world right now because I'm not a person who lives in fear. We
Yeah.
saw what happened even with, Dave Portnoy. Like, that's how real it is. Like, he captured it perfectly. He's like, this is not shit talking with the bros. This is like real. And I'll be honest with you, I sometimes am nervous to go out even wearing my Star of David. I got a ring camera doorbell. Ever since what happened with Charlie Kirk, I've been going to temple regularly. It just like awakens something spiritually in me, and I go every Friday night. And literally, James, I always like I have eyes in the back of my head. And
Sure.
that's just reality. That's not me being, and they'll say, "Oh, crocodile tears, oh, always the victim," But tell me your experience with that because it is so fucking real. Like, let's just be honest. It's real. It's bad.
All right. Let me try and cover a few of these and maybe end on a positive note because look, end of the day, you got to find the positivity. You got to
No, I
find
know.
joy
You're
and
like,
laughter
you
in life.
dystopian bitch.
Like, if
What
there's
not?
one thing I will say about Judaism and Jewish resilience is
That
that
is
it's not just
so
about
true.
surviving, it's about thriving and enjoying
Yes.
life, despite and maybe even in spite of all the BS that we have
With
to
the
endure.
odds stacked against us, right? For how
And I
many
hope that
years
anybody
now?
who's
Thousands?
sorry.
Yeah, with the odds cards stacked against us for how many years now? Thousands? But who's counting? But
3 or 4, geologically speaking, there might be a little
right.
bit of an argument between the specific date, but many, many. And I hope this applies to anybody who's non-Jewish as well. The same
Yes,
adversity, right?
I agree.
Everybody has their own difficulties in life.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it is up to us to decide what we're going to focus on. And whatever you focus on, the positive or the
Yeah.
negative, whatever you give energy to grows. So I want to come back to a positive. So I love ending on that. Auschwitz, obviously. Uh, Look, I'd never been and I'm going to put out a piece on it. We got permission to film. It's very, very touchy, which, by the way, circles over to your comments on Israel being bad at PR. Even in Judaism, we are so respectful about our dead that we don't even show a lot of the
Yeah.
factual,
Yeah.
validated imagery of what happened, not just on October 7th, but the Holocaust too. There's a lot that they don't want to show because it's disrespectful to the dead. I mean, there's an entire department in Israel called Zaka, who goes and cleans up the blood and the dead. Their job is supposed to be unusual deaths, which is supposed to be like car accidents. And October 7th tragically and drastically changed the term. But still, everybody should go to Auschwitz. And I'm grateful that it is there as a museum these days because millions of people have.
Oh,
I don't even know where to
yes.
begin, but the level, I think the hardest thing for me to comprehend was the volume of murder, the volume of death. And I walked through there for our several hour tour, simply in my brain kept making comparisons. as to what we're dealing with now. Something we never thought we would be dealing with. We thought the Holocaust and the tactics of trying to eradicate Jews from this planet were done and over. That was our grandparents' issue, not ours. And yet it is ours. It is now ours, and in some ways, an even more radicalized and scarier way. Because at Auschwitz and during the Holocaust, camps, death camps like Auschwitz, were created as a means to make death more efficient. Now, there were experiments happening, there were torture, there were a lot of horrible things. But the main purpose of it was less about torturing the people, more about just killing them. Not that that's any better, maybe slightly. But then the tactic of Hamas of using rape, using humiliation, using human shield, this has never been done. This has never been done, at least not in modern, last several hundred years human history. And it's really, really scary. So, um, I'm very grateful. My band came with me. A lot of my crew came with me. I think that everybody left with their own version of what they took from it. But on the way out, one of the last things you see is two-thirds of the Auschwitz survivors, the very few people, 1.3 million people went through there, and over 1.1 million were killed. Many died regardless because they were too sickly and weak once they got out. But the few people, it was like 500 children, 7,000 adults. But the survivors, roughly two-thirds of them immigrated to what became Israel. Israel was built by necessity. Before, there had to be an Israel. Jews lived amongst so many different populations all over the world. In Europe, yes, in the Middle East, very much so. And Israel was built and needs to remain to this day by necessity. It's the only place in the world where it is truly safe to be Jewish, where Jewish identity specifically is preserved. And if you look at the population of the rest of the world, how anybody could argue with the numbers, there's 15 million of us left, 15 million Jews. There's 1.2 or 3 billion Catholics, 1.3 or 4 billion Chinese, 1 point something billion Indians, around 2 billion Muslims, and
Yep.
yet
Yeah.
people are fighting over a place that holds only 8 million of a 15 million person ethno race left. Come
That
on.
tells you everything you need to know.
It's absurd.
Literally smaller than the state of New Jersey, the only democratic state in the Middle East, and even like before post World War II, like back. That's why it makes me so happy. Even the Christians who respect and appreciate, the real homeland of the Jews and the Israel, like all that, and that right. You just said, not to interject, but literally that tells you everything you need to
Yeah,
know.
it should. If they've gotten this far in the interview, which they haven't. The proverbial they that see the headline and just want to make you and I out to be horrible people. They don't
Do
want to have the
that.
conversation. They don't want to listen. They're not willing to learn. But I'll circle that back. I'll touch on I had lost my Star of David on this trip. I usually carry a couple different ones, and I only brought one. And partially, I think in the back of my mind was I'm going to places that might have even more of an issue with Judaism and anti-Semitism than even the United States. And then the
Wow.
one I brought, I lost, but I was so happy. I called one of the hotels. I happened to leave it, and they're shipping it. It should arrive today or tomorrow. And it's particularly special to me because this is one that I got in Israel. There's an artist that it takes rockets fired from Hamas and repurposes the metal into art. And if that is not the epitome
That's
of
crazy.
Judaism, I don't know what is. And so there's a Magen David that's folded over out of that. I'm grateful to have that. And the positive note, and you're asking how I navigate all this,
Yeah.
that I just want to touch on. I'm trying to answer all of them and not take too much time. But the positive note is when you speak about how authentic I am. One silver lining of being outspoken and speaking my mind is now social media has become so much easier for me. Whether it's motivation, even music, fitness, all the verticals, what I do, I get to just be me. I have pissed off enough people, certainly not intentionally. I want to be very clear about that, but inevitably, just by being Jewish, just by having the
I know.
opinion that being Jewish is not a bad thing and being unafraid to say so, I've pissed off enough people that now there's really nothing more I can do to piss people off. And the ones who have stayed, and more
Same.
importantly, the ones who have been attracted because of what I'm doing are more aligned with who I am. They're better fans, again, including the ones who have stayed. They become better and bigger fans of me because they've gotten to authentically and actually know me. And there is something so beautiful about that. And even if your tactic is just to be more successful on social media, be your damn self. That's the only thing you can do these days to be successful. So I have no regrets or qualms. And mind you, my message has always and will always be that of peace, of commonality, and of unity. And if you want to
Yeah.
pervert it into something else, that's your prerogative. But if you want to listen, that's the message. And I really can't imagine anybody actually getting upset at that message.
Isn't that the irony, right? Because the other camp who came, I hate this whole duality, but
Right.
again, on the surface are supposed to be about exactly what you're saying, and yet are act in a way that is complete the opposite, right?
They're
It's
chanting for
supposed to be
death.
justice, unity, humanity, yet what? Like
No.
the way that it's carried out, the things that are, placated and that are allowed, but do you have time for one last
Of
more?
course. No,
Okay.
please.
All right. So before we hopped on, we talked a little bit about the state of men and masculinity. Again, I've been talking about this for years on and off the red carpet. And same thing, James. Ain't it funny? Like how the things that are just right and true are like, it's like hush hush. I remember bringing this up on the carpet years ago, and people were like, oh, no, no, no. Just, uh, which is so crazy. But I find myself in this pickle because, you talk about the extremes who may or may not ever hear us. And I see what is going on with men. And I see how you are such a great role model in that way. And with your fiance, how you really respect and adore her. Um, and I wonder, with this issue, is it a type of thing that do you actually mobilize, move, reach out to the other side, reach out to them, like I was saying earlier? Or is it one of the, because I can't just let it play out like this. Um, and just what you're witnessing and, and I asked too, and the reason I say it was like so hush hush is because at the time, Hollywood really pushed this narrative of, all men are toxic and patriarch and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, guys, all right, like this isn't going to help our cause. Let's advocate for good, strong men like yourself. And now I think we're seeing that backlash, right? Hence the glorification of the Andrew Tates, the Nick Fuentes is all this. So how do we reach them? How are you doing it? And what are you witnessing even among these younger guys?
Well, much like advocacy, I suppose when it comes to anything around being a man and masculinity, first of all, let's not be afraid to say words. These are words. You don't need to assign a new negative meaning to the word masculinity. I think masculinity is a beautiful thing
Yeah,
that
me too.
you are proud to be in the body that you're in. You're proud to be a man like I am. Fantastic. But masculinity is also not just being big and tough. Masculinity is a complicated thing. It's being sensitive, it's being emotionally intelligent to know when you need to listen, to know when you have your opportunity to speak your own piece in your mind and talk about your emotions and all the things that I think are absolutely necessary. And I was raised around a lot of military and around a lot of martial artists. And
It
I
shows.
found the most, well, but why it shows, but at least from my perspective, what I think is the most amazing martial artists. And my sensei, growing up, I did something called Saito Ninjutsu with my father for many, many years. And my sensei was a Navy SEAL and then became an Episcopal priest to balance out his life. Such a worldly and interesting and masculine and deadly human being, and also one of the kindest, most patient, most intelligent, and emotionally intelligent. What I did and do still very much consider masculine and consider the most dangerous people in the room are often the ones who are the kindest, often the ones who have seen what violence can do, and they don't want to have any part of it. It's awful, but they know that they want to be prepared just in case they have to. One of my favorite adages is I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think it says it beautifully. If you've ever actually gone through any martial arts, any good martial arts, they teach you mostly discipline. And the first thing I ever learned is we're going to teach you things that you are never to use. unless you absolutely have to. That is just a fantastic lesson, I think, in masculinity. Again, if somebody wants to pervert the term to be something negative, that's their own prerogative. It's like calling a Jew a Nazi again. It doesn't make sense to me. You can assign whatever meaning you want. It doesn't change the literal definition of it. But I'll get back to speaking. Most of my speaking has been at college campuses. And so I've been having some amazing in-depth conversations with college students, some Jewish, some non-Jewish. Sometimes I'm there just for motivation or entrepreneurship. And the more I do it, the more students are emboldened to ask the really difficult and interesting and nuanced questions. And this gives me so much hope and so much excitement. I do see a lot of people that are simply confused
Yeah.
because they're not sure how they're supposed to act because they're not being taught that anymore. They might have been taught that being masculine is bad, but they don't know why. And so then they're like, well, I'm a guy. How am I supposed to act? And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have a father that I was able to talk to about this. And I hope that anybody listening who might be in a similar position, male or female, or doesn't matter, simply ask questions. You've got a parent or a friend or a teacher or a therapist, somebody to talk about it. Growing up and life is confusing and tough enough. Let's not add in extra layers of pressure. So the positive note I ended on is I have just seen such curiosity. And when I speak and when I have these conversations with young adults, such enthusiasm. And I think maybe we need to simplify some of these things and bring it back to a little bit of clarity, always with
Yes, it's
respect.
so true.
We overcomplicate a lot
It's
right
like
now, I
back to
think.
basics in a way.
Yeah,
Not
fundamental.
Stepford Wives basics. What's that?
Said fundamentals, not fundamentalists.
That part, exactly that part right there. And I too have been such a fierce advocate of, men and women as the yin and the yang and needing one another and how we're so strong and fierce in our respective roles. And we need the other. That is just truth. And to your point, it's gotten so convoluted to where men, the extremes, have to, assert themselves
Hmm.
because it's so this loss, scrambling, inferiority, all of it threatened and insecure to like stomp out women, right? So you have that we definitely need to have some remedy there, but all the way, James, to they don't even know to whether or not they should open a door for like it's just like when I see like a elderly woman or pregnant like struggling on an airplane to put luggage overhead and no one's help. I'm like, what? It's literally down to the
Even standing on a bus, like anybody older, if you were sitting down and you were young enough to stand, get your ass up and
I'm
offer the seat. Now,
saying.
if they say no, sit your ass back down. Great, you offered, but you
Yeah.
better offer. At least that's how I was raised, and I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. By the way, you're allowed to disagree with me, but don't tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Same with you, and I think that's just another thing back in life. Do, be, worship,
Yeah.
believe in whatever you want,
Yes, that
so
part.
long as you don't tell me that I have to. That's it.
That exact part and like the structure and the discipline and everything. But you are, again, not to like toot your horn, but I've been saying this forever, James. Like, instead of the combative and screaming at one another and it's all online and again glorifying these other figures, it's like let's elevate the men like yourselves who actually are a good walking embodiment example. So I
I
do have one
appreciate that.
request before I let you go, and that is, I've been very much unsatisfied with. I just feel like there's more that I feel like confined behind in this green screen behind a computer, and I've been thinking like, how do I get with the masses, with kids, with people to help motivate and mobilize them? So whenever you do, and I don't even know what capacity and how you do it, but I'd love to be involved with your when you speak at college, whatever it is that's in person and with people in any way. That would be
That'd be
awesome.
fantastic. Where are you based out of?
Nashville.
Oh, you're in Nashville. Me too.
Hmm. Oh, I
Oh, well,
didn't know
that's
that.
easy.
No way.
Yeah, Caitlin and I, my fiance and I moved there a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Okay.
easy. Next time we'll do this in person.
I'd love that.
Um, and I would love that. I mean, I'm mostly on tour until well into April at this point.
Okay.
But after that, I'm going to continue to be kind of discovering where I'm going. I'm starting to get
Awesome.
asked quite a bit to go and speak in different places. And
Awesome.
maybe, I mean, I just started working on a book. So maybe at some point I'll have my own tour and then something like
There
that
you
could be
go.
interesting. But I'd certainly
Yes.
be open to it. And we should get
Awesome.
together in Nashville and brainstorm.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm there. Yeah, let me just add one. I know you're Prague here, there. You're just touring internationally to sold out arenas, like I said. But let me just add one more thing to your list. Thank you so much for what you do, for just unabashedly, standing firm in what you believe in. It's like I said, sadly, it's a scarcity. And to end really kind of on a deep note, like look at Jesus. I mean, when he was crucified amongst these two, criminals, and no one really, followed him really at the time. And now, billions and billions of people later. So all that to say, I appreciate you standing firm in what you believe.
My pleasure. Thank you for saying that. And I think that just ended on a human note, right?
Yeah.
We all have a lot to learn. But if we can start with a conversation of just, hey, we're going to respect each other,
Yeah.
try and learn from each other, and have the conversation. I think that's where we should all try and come to. We can disagree, and we should argue, we should debate.
Yes.
That's how we improve. But so long as we can do
Yes.
so in a cordial manner. And that's why I'm not yelling and screaming my content. I don't think it's effective. Nobody's ever yelled and screamed at me and convinced me of their narrative, but I've certainly heard people speak eloquently, intelligently, from experience, from reference, from fact, from history, and gone, I didn't know that. Then I pay attention. So trying to attract that person by speaking the way in which you want to be spoken to.
I have the same philosophy. You're like me in a male brain. I'm gonna make my pronouns James/Maslow. I identify.
I love it.
Uh, thank you so much. I will see you when you're
My pleasure.
back here on the homeland in Nashville. And good luck with the rest of your tour. And thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Good to see you. My pleasure. Talk
You as
soon.
well. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Chris, how was your pee break?
My pee break.
They might flash you undetected.
Wear them, baby.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Quite an intro.
Let's address the elephant in the room. That's not the elephant in the room. There's no elephant. Nobody cares.
I too am a thought criminal.
Good. Well, I like you
Does
already.
this look like a girl who's joking around? Messing around?
But how much do you actually understand money? Especially the new wave.
Beauty or intelligence? When you unleash both, it is men's crypto.